Hello and welcome to the next episode of Woodward's Watercolours. Now, tonight we're going to be looking at the entry-level watercolour pencils. These are Daler Rowney Simply watercolour pencils, and I have never used them before. So you're going to get an honest opinion on what I think of them. My son bought these in a pound store or a dollar store if you're in America or in North America. So these are really very entry level. So I want to try these out and see what I think and see whether they match up to the more expensive, or just to give you my opinion on how to use them and what I think of them. So come with me and we're going to try out these Daler Rowney Simply watercolor pencils together. Okay, so we have the Daler Rowney Simply watercolor pencils added up together, and we have them sitting all down here. So we have 12 in total, including the white. Now I want to make a comment on white watercolor pencils. Now white is often included in a watercolor set, and I don't use it because I really do believe that you're better to use the white of the paper and then leave negative space. But what it is actually really good for, I've used it before, is whenever you've done a painting and there may be darker areas that you want to add highlights to, maybe you missed the spot where the negative space haven't been left, this is a really good way to just add that little bit of a highlight, but it's not something that I would normally use. So please note how I have so beautifully got this all prepared, a bit like Blue Peter, and that the order of the little swatches here correlates with the order of the pencils. I know, it's those little things that bring us joy. Today what we're using for the sample brush is the Daler Rowney. I think it's a number 6. I can never tell whether it's 6 or 9. I'm confident it's a 6. It's a graduate range and it's Daler Rowney Filbert. So what we're going to do is we're just going to see what the pigment release is like when we add the water, and then we're just going to drag it across. So, I mean, actually, it's better than I thought it would be. I thought that because this really is the budget end of the watercolor pencil market, that it was just going to be absolutely and utterly abysmal. And yet you can see, I mean, there, look at that, the carry of the pigment there. This is the black. Now look at that. I can agitate that a little bit more. Okay, making sure, especially after the black one, clean the brush. So then we've got the pink. As I expected, I didn't think pink would be too great in terms of pigment being released. I've got the more kind of viridian blue. The top one I would say is really more of a leaf green. And then this is the phthalo blue, which we would expect. Look at the pigment release on that. That's much more like the Inktense pencils. Now I've got a cadmium yellow. Right, look at that. Flip me, that's pretty good. Then like a pearl scarlet, or certainly like an alizarin crimson, I suppose is the better term. It doesn't say now on the pencils what the color actually is, but obviously they're probably assuming that if you're using these, you're just going to go by the color that you see rather than by the name. I don't know, I'm not sure. The reason for that could be a cost thing. And then like a Van Dyke brown. I mean, all in, it is actually pretty impressive. Especially look at that black and the phthalo blue in particular. You can see the way the pigment is released and settling there, and even the draw of that lavendery kind of purple, and the way it's pulling at the end there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to draw a scene together, and I'm going to put the reference image up on the channel or in the community section of the channel. And if you want to have a go at that, please, as always, send it in and I'll put it up on the community section, and it's always good fun to see them going up together. So let's do that now. Okay, so we've got our 190 GSM A5 watercolor paper, and I mean, none in these demos I've been using this 190 paper. It's a nice size to be able to use. Okay, so what we're going to do, first of all, we're drawing this scene of the river. I can't even remember the name of the river, but it's a river in Antrim, and I'm confident it'll come to me. What I do whenever I'm starting with the likes of colouring pencils is I really try and keep the pencil moving. The reason for doing that is really to try and find, I don't want the lines really to be all hard and fast and too concerned. Now, the last video that I did, I was doing the abandoned cottage in Donegal, and it required some sort of more lines and, you know, more structure, because it was a cottage or a building. So it requires from my point of view, requires a little bit more thought just in terms of line and line placing. Whereas I find that whenever I'm doing something that is really trees and is very natural, then having, now it's not a continuous line, but there are almost elements of continuous line in what I'm doing here. I want to keep the fluidity of the river, pardon the pun, and also just, you know, putting a bit of life into it. And I find that just keeping it moving for me keeps it just nice and fresh and alive. So this is really the kind of a sap green that we're using first. I'm using it effectively to sketch out the scene, to get the course of the river and the trees that are surrounding it as well. And then I can lean in more fully here. I'm thinking already I'm going to add in a little bit of cadmium into some of these areas, but I'm just trying to get the general feel of the place. Now, what I'll tend to do as well is I'm not looking to use this pencil only once. What I want to do is probably come back to it when I pick up on this other green. This is much more of a vibrant, more like actually the Inktense watercolor pencil, but it will give me more of the depth. And actually, as you add it on there, it's not too crazily vibrant. You know, it's going to add in a little bit more depth. Now, I'm not familiar with these watercolor pencils at all, but maybe that's a really helpful thing as well, to sort of just show a bit of learning, you know, as I'm doing it. So just trying to get in some of the depth. Now, leaning a little bit more heavily. There's not an awful lot of give or more release of pigment whenever I'm doing that. So that's quite interesting. Just I'm noticing that as I do this. I'm just trying to find these areas where it's that little bit darker. So let's get some of that. Now, I also, as you can see from the swatch that I did just before, there is some pigment release. And actually, for these budget watercolor pencils, it's not too shabby. Like, I thought it would actually be much poorer than that. So well done, Daler Rowney, for getting something that is actually going to be really accessible for all of us. You know, you're not going to have to pay too much money to get yourself these entry-level watercolor pencils. Okay, so just trying to notice where different parts of the river are. Okay, now what I want to do is get in some of the cadmium yellow. Oh jeepers, that is strong when you see that on the page. That's actually really, really popping, just even looking at it. I mean, the other application you can have for these pencils is never add water to them, and they'll give you really quite strong and vibrant pencils. I'm trying to capture some of this outline here because the light is clearly hitting this. It's nearly backlighting some of the leaves in the tree. So I'm trying to capture that a little bit. What I want to do is go back to this lighter green and do that over that and see what that's going to do for me. Notice how I changed the direction as well as to how I'm holding the pencil, and as I'm getting the pigment down onto the page, it is also beginning to blunt. So it's good to have the trusty Fabre Castell pencil sharpener and actually getting to use the color section, and look, that's coming to a really sharp point nice and easily. So they certainly passed the sharpening test. So the color kind of deepens as we go into different parts of the foliage here. It really is, the river is really lined with these beautiful trees, which is just like this. We're going to go back to this, the more viridian again. Also, some of that actually is more, most tones are much more in the distance as well. Just trying to find, it's lovely whenever you get into drawing something, you just begin to notice so many things that you didn't see before, and it's just such a wonderful way to study and appreciate things. The leaves obviously get larger the closer they get to you. Just some darker areas here. I want to keep the movement, I was going to say leaf-like, just so that it's not gonna, I find that when you do that kind of a scrubbing mark almost with the watercolor pencil, then it really is left as a residue on the page underneath the water. So I don't really want to overdo that. Now I also want to just touch in a little bit of orange, because I noticed ever so slightly there's just a little bit of that, so just wanted to notice that and then get that brown in further down into where the riverbank is, and just noticing that in just a few sections now, much more so along the side of the river here, just in some areas there. And then the next thing is the river, actually the water, the dominant color that I see is this very strong black. Always doing horizontal line across is going to indicate, well, certainly to me, just notice it's going to indicate water. Also within the branches of these trees, there's also areas where it is very much darker. Now I could also use the phthalo blue, but that's going to really explode in quite a strong, intense, vibrant, pigmented way. This is the darkest point in here, so I am leaning much more heavily. Now, I just want to highlight again, these are budget watercolor pencils. These are setting you back a couple of pounds, a couple of dollars. It's not a lot at all, and you know that's really worth mentioning. These are quite incredible for even the way that they're going onto this page, and they feel quality. They actually really do feel quality. Just trying to get some of those ripples and marks in the water here. Getting these lovely, like, almost looks like scale-like marks. Now, okay, along this bank here, so it's very dark in there. Now I know where I need to go back to as well with the, it's dark under here. I know where I need to go back to as well, just in that area in the background, to be able to really capture a little bit more of the trees and things in the background. You can tell that sometimes when I stop talking, it's because I'm really trying to focus on what I'm doing. Talk amongst yourselves. Right. It's bad when somebody laughs at their own jokes, isn't it? Okay, so we're just trying to retrace some of the... I'm so actually excited to get to adding water to this. I'm going to pick a different brush again. I think I'll go for the pointed wash on this to try and see what we can do with the pigment that's already present here. Okay, so I'm going to stop drawing, and I'm going to use this, my beloved Aquafine. Goodness, it's all Daler Rowney tonight, and actually that wasn't actually intentional. So this brush holds, like, it feels like 1,000 litres of water. So let's see how this goes here. So the pigment release really, like, it's really not bad. I mean, let me say again, these are budget. You're not expecting a massive coverage. And they're doing all right. I'm deliberately Certainly not at this point. I'm going to give it a wee wash there now, but deliberately wanting, you know, some of these colours to mix together to give me, like, that's nice there. Look at the way that lightness is coming through because of the yellow, because of that cadmium. Now, I'm just, you can see I'm agitating the colours just to highlight them. Now, you can see how the black then should really hopefully give, there's a bit of the pencil come off. That black really should give that sense of depth. I'm just going to clean the brush again in a second once we get to this juncture where the yellow is again. That yellow is really very vibrant, and is the green. Okay, let's see. On the test. Whoa, my goodness. Did not expect that. Just indicating there's something else going on down there. Okay, now what I want to do then is I'm going to switch again. I'm going to go to Daler Rowney, surprise, surprise, flat wash 3/4 inch, the Simply one. So the reason that I'm using the flat wash for this is because I'll be able to capture more of the sense, hopefully. I know I will, because I've done this many times. That sense of the river, and just whenever you're doing water, really notice the directions. Rivers are full of these multi-directional little ripples, and there is an element, like all across here, it does go left to right, but the more that you get closer to it, you can kind of differentiate between the different movements of the water. Again, it really moves all over the place. And then down to these marks here, which I do want to agitate as well, but also that's where the watercolor pencil works so well, because it keeps those kind of line, not the kind of, it keeps the lines underpinning everything. I'll give a wee flick here. Not loads of pigment on it, but enough for a little flick. Oh, and always have to remember your signature, don't you? I'll give it one wee sharpen. Well, let's take a look at this. I mean, I am actually seriously impressed. These are budget watercolor pencils. Like I said, between, I think they were about between £1 and £3, so, you know, a couple of dollars. And just look at how well the pigment actually does almost explode, certainly with the black. I mean, it's just so rich and dark, and the yellow as well. The green is a little less, it's not quite as explosive, but it certainly works. So not bad for a budget pencil. Well now, wasn't that surprising? These little budget couple of dollar watercolor pencils, which I have never used before, were really quite surprising and actually incredibly successful, and just really worked a treat. I'd be so interested to hear your comments underneath about this video, because these are budget pencils. The Inktense watercolor pencils that I have cost 10 times, and more than that actually, 10 times the price of these ones. And actually these were really quite effective. Now, I adore my Derwent Inktense watercolor pencils, but I mean, these are a bit of a no-brainer. So if you've used budget watercolor pencils, do get in touch and let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of the watercolor sketch painting, whatever you would call it, that I've just completed. I'm really quite pleased with it. Thank you as always for watching my videos. Always appreciate the views and the comments. Please like and subscribe, and as always get in touch and let me know of techniques and products and things that you would like me to take a look at in these videos. But for now, a very surprised and pleased Colin bids you adieu and says bye for now.